Transistors is also a semiconductor device used for amplifying and switching the electronic signal to the electrical power. It is composed of the semiconductor material, usually with at least three terminals for the connection to this external circuit. A voltage or current applied to one pair of the transistor terminal changes to the current through the another pair of the terminals. Because the control output power can be highlighted, then this control input powers transistor can simplify for the signal. Today, some transistors are packed individually, but many more are found embedded in this integrated circuit IC. The transistor is fundamentally built into the block modern of electronics device. This is ambiguous of this modern electronic systems, first conceived by the Julius in 1926, particularly implemented in the 1947, and the American physicist John Barden Walter also said that the transistor revolutionized field of electronics and paved the way of the smaller chips and radios, calculators and computers, among other things. Transistor is one of the list of this IEEE milestone in the electronics, and the Barden, the Berriel, and the Scott Lee shared the 1995 Nobel Prize in the Physics for the achievement of it. In 1956, he taken the Nobel Prize for the invention of transistors. Thermolytic triode, a vacuum tubes invented in 1907, enabling amplified the radio technology and the long-distance telephony. The triode, however, was freeing the device that consumed a lot of power. Physicist Julius H. Lineford filed a patent for the field effector transistor FET in Canada in 1925, which was intended to be a solid-state replacement for the triode. Lineon Field also filed the identical patent of United States in this 1926 and 1928. However, the Linefield did push the public and research article about his device, nor did the patent the cities any specific example of the work prototype, because the production of the high-quality semiconductor material was still decided. Solid-state amplified idea should not have found the identical use in this 1920-1930, even if such device that has been built in 1934. This was first invented in 1934. The German inventor Ockhall presented the similar device in the Europe. From November 17, 1947 to the December 23, 1947, John Barden and the Walter Berriel at Bell Labs in the United States performed the experiment and observed that the two gold point contact with the applied to the crystal germaniums and signal was produced with the outer power greater than the input. The solid state of the physics group William Solly saw this potential in this area. Over the next few years, worked in the gently expand to the knowledge of semiconductor. The term of the transistor was coined by Jones R. Parsi, and as a contractor of the term of the transistances. According to the Lineon Hodgson of this Vicky Dech, another biography of the John Barden Stokely has proposed that the Lab Bell first patent of the transistor should be based on this field effect on that to be named after the inventor. Having unearthed unified patent that went of the obscurity and years of earlier, lowers the Bell Labs advice against the Solly proposal because the idea of this field was very good. Accomplishing Solly and Barden and the Britain jointly awarded in 1956 Nobel Prize in Physics for their research in semiconductor and the discovery of the transistor effect. In the 1948, this point contact transistor was independently invented by the German physicist Herbert Marie and Walker while working this compared of the Dutch Fering the Singapore and the Washington House subsidiary located in this Paris. Marie has previously experimented and developed the crystal rectified and silicon germanium in the German radar effort during the World War II. Using this knowledge, he began researches in the phenomena that interference in this 1947. By June in 1948, with ceasing current flowing through this point contract. First high-frequency transistor was surface barrier germanium transistor, developed by the Philco in 1953, capable of operating up to 60 MHz. These were made by the etching depression into this N-type germanium base from both sides of the jet indium safety until it was a few 10,000 of inch of thick. Helium electrofed into this depression form the collector and emitter. The first prototype pocket transistor radio was shown in the Inter-Mall of all company founded by the Harvard Mary in the 1952. At the internationally flanking and discovered between August 29, 1953 September 9, 1953. The first production all transistors car radio was produced in the 1955. The Crystaller and the Philco used the surface barrier transistor in its circuitry, which are also first suitable for the high-speed computers. The first working silicon transistor was developed at the Spade Lab in January 26, 1956 by Morris Transbenium. The first commercial silicon transistor was produced by the Texas Instruments in this 1954. This was work of the Gordon Teals in the export of the growing crystal of the high priority, who had previously worked at the Bell and the labs in the first MOS transistor actually built was King's and Atlas Bell Labs in 1960. Important, the transistor in the key active component of this practically all modern electronics. Many consider it to be a greatest invention in the 20th century. It is important of this today's society rests in its ability to be mass productions using the high automated process that achieve this astonishingly low persistent of registered cost. The invention of the first transistors at the Bell Lab was named the IEEE milestone in 2009, although several companies such each produced over the billion individual packages. Transistors even years, and the vast majority of the transistors were now produced the integrated circuit, often shortened to the IC, microscopy or the simple chips along with its diode, resistors and capacitors, electronics component to produce the complete electronic circuit. A logical gate consisting of and about the 20 transistors, whether than advance of the microprocessor in 2009 can use many of the 3 million transistors also. MOSFET. About the 60 million transistors were built in the 2002 for each man, woman and child on earth. The transistor low cost, flexibility and the reliability have made its ubiquitous device, and transistorized mechanic circuits have replaced electromechanical device in the controlling appliances as machinery. It is often easier to cheaper to use the standard microcontroller and write to the computer program to carry out the control function than to design an equivalent mechanical control function. Simplified operation. The essential unuseful of the transistor come from its ability to use a small signal applied between one pair of its terminal to control much larger signal to another pair of the terminal. This property is called the gain. It can prolong in the stronger output signal a voltage or the current which is proportional to the weaker input signal. That is, it can act as amplifier. Alternatively, the transistors can be used to run the current off on the circuit as electrically controlled switch, where the amount of the current is determined by other circuit of element. There are the two types of the transistors which have slight differences how they are used in circuit. A bipolar transistor, the terminal, the level base collector or emitter. A small current at the base terminal that is flowing between this base and the emitter and can be controlled and switched much larger current between this current and emitter terminal. For the field effective transistor, the terminal or level gate sources and drain voltage at the gate can be controlled at current between the source and drain. The image represents the typically bipolar transistor and circuit. Changes will flow between these emitters and collectors terminal depending on the current of these spaces, because the internal base and emitter connections behave like the semiconductor bidiodes. A voltage drop developed between the base and emitter while the base and current exist. This voltage dependent on the other areas. Transistor as a switch. Transistor are commonly used in the digital circuit as the electronic switch which can be either on or off state both in high power applications such as switched mode power supplies and the low power applications such as the logic gates. Important parameters of these applications include the current switches and the voltage handle and the switching speed characterized by the rise and fall time. in grounded emitter transistor circuit, such as this light switching circuit shows as the base voltage rise and the emitter of the collected current rise.